Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the photo of the week on the Daily Critique. This week's photo of the week was created by Ed, who's an intermediate photographer from Florida. Ed shot this with a Pentax K7 camera, Sigma 150 to 500 millimeter f5.68 to 6.3 zoom lens at 340 millimeters after the 1.5 crop factor conversion. This is a very long telephoto shot, somewhere just over 500 millimeters. Rest of the metadata that we have is f8 and 1/320th of a second. The backstory here had said that he was observing great blue herons nesting and wanted to convey the nesting instincts of the great blue heron, and he said that he intentionally picked a line that included some burned out vegetation that had been burned out from an unusual cold spell for South Florida where he was shooting, and he wanted to create color potential by picking this line. And he said that he's captured the male returning to the nest here with a branch. Really beautiful image. To me, it's obviously a story image about wildlife behavior. That's what Ed's going for here, and he's captured that moment just amazingly well. But to me, this image is also a really beautiful image when it comes to color. It almost reminds me of a tapestry of color, and I just love the idea that Ed in his scouting has chosen this line for the color potential. There's several different things I wanted to mention as possible takeaways about color today. I've been talking a lot about color lately on the Daily Critique, so good to kind of continue that and reinforce some of those ideas. We have a really beautiful sense here of dynamic color because we have colors that are complementing each other. The main subject to me is the male bird that's returning with the branch, and it's really wonderful how the blue of the male great blue heron is being complemented by the red-orange in the background. And there's also a really beautiful sense of just complementary color in the background itself, very dynamic the way the red-orange is playing off of the green. And also really beautiful over here, even though these colors, the blue and the green, are close to each other on the color wheel. The bird overall represents a sort of luminosity or value that's very bright, and then having the one simple color behind the female bird is helping to create some wonderful separation. Color, even though there's a lot of it here and there's kind of a feeling of a tapestry of color, color is actually showing up in a way that relative to the subjects, the simple. You have the green here that sort of backs the female bird, you have the red over here that backs the male bird, and you have a chance for these color relationships to not only be dynamic but to create separation in terms of near to far, main subject and secondary subject. The other thing that I'm enjoying about color is you have a real dynamic sense of color in terms of three major color ideas in a really powerful color triad. The RGB, red, green, and blue color triad is being suggested. Another powerful thing about color here is that colors are not exactly primaries. They're primary ideas that we can think of. If we're thinking of the concept of, let's say, the painter's color wheel, then we could talk about the idea of red being a primary, but red is really more of a red-orange. It's more sort of a mixture of colors. It's more of a secondary color idea, a tertiary color idea. When we get away from just pure primaries, whether we're talking about either the printer's color wheel or the painter's color wheel, when we get away from the idea of a primary green or a primary blue or primary red, and we start to push towards more in-between colors where those colors have been mixed with a secondary, then the colors communicate in a way that's different emotionally. Primaries can tend to give us more of an ordinary emotional feeling, and more tertiary color can give us a feeling that's more painterly or more fine art. And I wanted to mention that. Another thing that's very powerful here from a color standpoint is with all of the color, and with the color being pretty vivid, I still get a sense of stopping in some places and getting to color neutral. In other words, there tends to be places, both the bird and back in here and over in here, where I'm getting to a feeling of pure gray, and that tends to give me a color visual sea level. Clearly, Ed has done an incredible job of capturing this moment in terms of telling the story. Female bird sitting on the nest, the male bird's about to land. There's this incredible separation relative to the main ideas in the background, and both birds, the male has nesting material in its mouth, It's not quite landed. The feet are separating. Both of the birds are very sharp relative to the background. This bird is not moving and it's sharp. It's amazing. It's not just focus. It's not just the right f-stop. It's not just the idea of having the lens stabilized in a way where this bird can be sharp. It's also a shutter speed at this focal length that will render most of this bird sharp, even though it's still landing. And just the wings are slightly blurred, which is an amazing combination of sort of static and movement that really does suggest the idea, the implication that the male bird is landing and it is moving. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's pretty amazing, all the different things that are having to work here for this image to play out. One other thing that I'll mention here is, even though Ed has two main subjects, the idea that the male is moving and the male is higher in the shot and the movement is suggesting one of the diagonals helps to keep this from being a static image. The color is making it very dynamic, and this movement, this diagonal movement, is making it dynamic. The cool thing about diagonals is they get us away from implying movement that is static, that could divide the frame in half or make us think about 50-50. And implying major diagonals also can help to unify one side of the image with the other. Last thing that I want to say here is that Ed has been submitting images of birds for quite a while to the Mindful Eye website. I don't know Ed, but from seeing all the submissions that he's made, it's very easy to make up a story that Ed shoots birds a lot and that he practices this a lot and he puts a lot of time in. You hear him saying that he scouted this. He not only scouted so he'd know where the nest was, he even picked an angle that would give him color potential, and you can imagine a lot of other work has gone into it. So much of the times we want to get better at something, but we're unwilling sort of to sacrifice or do what it takes to get better. And so much of the time, great shots involve pre-planning, then a lot of work while you're there and really sort of pushing and executing, and then even on top of that, some sort of serendipity, or we could call it luck. Great shots a lot of times are really multi-dimensional in what it requires of not only us, but also sort of the reality of the situation. And I just wanted to mention that today. If you want your photography to get better, then we really need to put the time in. It's not just a matter of scattering and praying. We can do that with a camera because every time you release the shutter, you're taking a picture. But if we want to consistently get better, then we need to consciously practice. Conscious practice is where we go out and we work on something in a way where we can tell whether we're getting better. And one of many very powerful ways to do that is to pick one subject and to stick with it for a while. And Ed's commitment to shooting birds, just based on his submissions to the Mindful Eye and the images he shares in the community, seems to just be huge. And I'd really encourage you, sort of a final takeaway from the video today, to be inspired by the work and the practice that Ed does on the subject of birds. Very, very, very technically difficult subject to shoot, and think about how you might pick one subject and work with it for a while where you can see that your images are getting better relative to the vision that you have for your images of that particular subject. I want to say a big thank you to Ed for sharing the stunning wildlife image with us. I want to say a big thank you to you for being here. Hope to see you again real soon on The Mindful Eye. Hope you have a great weekend.